I'm now pleased to welcome to the stage our next two speakers. A Democrat representing Michigan's 12th District, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, has served in the House since 2015. Congressman Dingell is a member of the Energy and Commerce and Natural Resource Committees. Thank you, Congressman Dingell. And a Democrat representing California's 25th Congressional District, Congresswoman Katie Hill, is serving her first term in the House.
Thank you both for joining
The
us.
Congresswoman was elected by her colleagues to be the freshman co-representative to leadership in the 116th Congress. She's vice chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform and a member of the Armed Services and Science, Space, and Technology Committees. It's a pleasure to have both Congresswomen join us this evening.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you both for being here. And I should say, I feel like this should be our living room. I don't know who these 5 chairs are safe for up here, but they're not here, so screw them. If you want to come up and take these chairs, come right on up. If you want to come sit on the floor, come on up, sit on the floor. A lot of you are young and don't care. Steve Culbertson, you can sit on the floor, but help yourself. I want people to be as comfortable as you can because we're very grateful you're here. So let me start out, Debbie, with you, Debbie Dingell, Congresswoman Dingell. After Donald Trump was elected, you wrote one of these zinger op-eds. There are a billion op-eds out there. I recommend you read as much as you can. It gives people the temperature. But this is one that caught everybody sort of by the, it was the lump in the throat, that you were talking about what people really wanted, the pain they were in, that they wanted to kind of raise their kids, have a meal on the table. It basically was the kitchen table agenda and said, we're not reaching them, we're not there, and they're not feeling that we're on their side. And it was out of this frustration that Hillary Clinton lost, President Trump came in. I had interviewed Vice President Biden around the same time. He had said the Democratic Party then had become a party of snobs. And you and I talked about that. I'm just interested in, now that we're into this a bit, where are we today? Would you write the same op-ed today, or have you and your colleagues made any progress?
I'm not sure. I think I'm one of those people that thinks that we're not going to win an election being anti-somebody, but we got to be fighting for working men and women every single day. And for young people, I think a lot of you were worried about, I don't know if any of you are still in college, but a lot of you have student debt. I think that you want to get a job. And ultimately, I see some older people in the room, like David Ray, but when you get a job, someday you'll fall in love, you'll get married, you're going to want to be able to, used to be that people wanted to buy a house in a safe neighborhood. And the people that I represent kids at the University of Michigan, but I represent a lot of people that work in factories and part of the auto industry. They just want to make enough money so they can live in a safe neighborhood, send their kids to school, they're sick, be able to go to the doctor, afford their medicine, be able to educate their kids, send them to college if you want to go to college, and then they want to have a safe and secure retirement. And for too many people, we don't talk about it. And you know what? It's too big. Katie sits with me in meetings. I'm not quiet. We don't. Donald Trump won because of trade deals, bad trade deals. I have to remind people in our caucus about that every single day. She was there yesterday when I got into it again.
I think it's very passionate.
And so I think we're trying to be more, but I think too many people are very busy being anti, and nobody's above the law. Everybody needs, but we're not going to win with an anti-agenda. We're going to win if we show people we care about the issues that matter to you.
Before I jump to Katie, and I want to ask you just one other question, because you've been on the Hill longer, and I used to say on issues like trade or on inequality or how an economy should work or on foreign policy, that the tensions were not really between the parties, they were within the parties. And so whether it had over fiscal issues, the blue dog Democrats versus the non-blue dog Democrats. Is that true today? Have the parties coalesced around something and you're now competing across parties? There's a great public policy school, and I think it'd be a great question to ask. Is the tension really between parties today, or is it within the parties?
It's both, and it's both in both parties. Mm-hmm. So there are different trades in issue. I think, honestly, you can quote me, I think Bob Lighthizer, who's the current U.S. Trade Representative, has done a better job than any Democratic USTR trade rep I've known.
That's called a tweetable moment.
No, well,
yeah.
President Trump's not happy with me. I managed to make a tweet by name last week. on trade. He wasn't listening to everything that I said. But I think that there are other, trade's an issue that divides both parties, but there are a lot of other issues that divide both parties.
Congresswoman, you're new to the Congress, and what is your sense as you're coming in? And part of what makes you cool, I mean, there are many things that make you cool, but part of what makes you cool is that you're one of the first millennials to serve in Congress. And Elijah Cummings was so impressed that you were the one that you went immediately to him and said, how can we work together to get things going on? So I'm interested in what your early take is.
So, first of all, I think about everything from the perspective of why did I do this, right? What's the reason that I decided to, frankly, give up what I thought was an amazing career and a life that was that involved a lot fewer hours on a plane and better weather, if I'm being honest. Southern California, Los Angeles, best weather.
Yeah.
It's because I know so many people within my generation, within my communities, felt like our political system was broken. And for too long, it was really working for special interest groups, for big corporations, for party politicians. And the issues that we cared about the most were pushed aside, forgotten, no progress was made. You'd hear about them over and over again, but you knew that what you were hearing was completely empty. So when I look at the inter-party strife or the strife and the conflicts between the two parties, it can be frustrating because I see so much of that coming from the system as a whole being broken, right? I don't think you get pushed to these extremes if it weren't for gerrymandering or if it weren't for sort of the process set up the way that it was, where, a primary, because of the primary system, you're going to get people who reflect the most extreme views. And a big part of that, if I'm being honest, is because of who votes and who votes in primary elections, who votes in general elections. And one of the reasons that the issues that millennials care about, that even younger people care about, are ignored or are used as a talking point but nothing else, are because of a tendency to not show up and vote. And so I think that's kind of the framework that I look at it from. And I feel like there are opportunities. There are certainly opportunities. I've co-sponsored legislation with someone, Martin Meadows, who, on a
Freedom Caucus.
On a policy-related level, we are about as far apart as it comes. But we have found certain issues that we can actually make some progress on. And I was talking to one of my colleagues earlier, who's also a new member, who was saying that just imagine this, right? Like just think about forget anyone that might seem offended by this who's an existing member. But what if we had two parties and the leaders of those two parties at the beginning of the Congress got together and said, hey, we're not going to agree on most things, but these are the things that we have in common, and these are the things that we think we can pull together. And they had people within their own parties that are saying, okay, progressives versus blue dogs versus New Dems. All right, fine, there's going to be lots of differences there, but here's the common thread. Just imagine how effective we could be. And that just doesn't exist in this kind of a system. And I think you have to truly be creative and look at reshaping the system as a whole if you want to change that. And that starts with the power of the voters. It only happens if voters are saying, this is a mandate. We're not okay with things happening the way that they have been.
Thank you. Debbie, do you think there's a problem in the way we media are reporting
Yes. I'm sorry.
on the political scene? Congressman Curtis, I'm going to say Isaac, but Curtis was just up here talking about 72 members being together, Democrats and Republicans in Israel, that there was far more collegiality going on behind the scenes than people see. You've talked a lot about working with Congressman Fred Upton on a whole variety of things. Are we missing that? Are we somehow not elevating the moments when things are there and missing these moments? I mean, I guess when we were talking about drug pricing, which I'd love to ask you about, is there a story that we're missing in a potential bipartisan arrangement on drug pricing?
So I'm going to answer. I'm going to sort of include some of what Katie said too. I'm one of the people that thinks that President Trump got elected because people were tired of the partisan pickery,
Right.
and they wanted to see us get things done, and they thought that President Trump would shake things up. Now he has. Did they think it would be the outcome? No, I don't think this. I think there should have been some women there, but our forefathers actually wrote a good document, and I don't think they quite saw gerrymandering and I actually wrote my master's thesis, and I went back to school later in life. Someday I'll get my doctorate, on civility in the Congress. This has been one of my big bugaboos for a long time. And we go up and down. I mean, there have been times of great strife, and I was married to a man that I loved with my whole heart and soul, and he always said, to write good legislation, you start in the middle. And he always did start in the middle, and not everybody liked that, and he paid a price at the end because he was somebody like that. Social media has changed, and the technology, the 24-hour news cycle, I hate to say this, the fake news sometimes. No, I have to agree with them some days. But we've got to learn. That's where we've got to, how does democracy survive in the 24 news hour cycle and people feeling the impact of social media? Which I think is a major problem, period. I would say to all you young people, you don't talk to each other.
But in the context of that, I've been interested in the role, and you and I have talked about this many times, but on healthcare, the cost of healthcare and what you're doing, and your frustration with your own party, frankly, on some of this, but also trying to work across the aisle there. I mean, is this something that we're going to be able to laud as a moment when the system sort of worked like it was supposed to, or do you think it's going to be a big failure?
Honestly, I think that if we go into the election, Democrats or Republicans, and we haven't done something about the cost of drugs, we're all going to be defeated. So I have a positive outlook and think we will get something done.
Katie, where are you on impeachment?
Oh, wait, why not give me a chance to answer that part?
Drug pricing's much better.
Drug pricing, impeachment, where are you? Yeah.
So we were just talking about this earlier, and the challenge with the phrasing that has been used and the different terms around investigation versus inquiry versus actual impeachment or impeachment proceedings. And the reality is that we have two jobs, as far as I'm concerned, that we were elected to do. One is, as Debbie said, to work on the issues that matter the most to people. For me, in my community, it was on issues like the cost of prescription drugs, the cost of health care, the cost of housing, the inability to commute to work, the inability to pay for your student debt, all of those kinds of things. They expect me to be working on those issues. But there's also the reality that you were elected, and the reason we saw such a turnover in Congress is because you were elected to be a check on the president, and we were elected to ensure accountability, and we have to do our jobs in that vein. We took an oath to the Constitution, and at the end of the day, there is a document that we follow unless we amend it as the United States, and that's what has to guide our actions. Not politics. It cannot be whether we think it's going to be politically advantageous for us to impeach the president or not. But what we do know is that we have these investigations that are open. The investigations have not fundamentally changed. Most of the behaviors that we're investigating are a pattern. They're ongoing. The newest investigations that you see kind of announced on a rolling basis are because of information that has come up in other investigations. And so this next step that that the Judiciary Committee is going to be voting on is a continuation of that process. I see it as an investigation. I'm one who has not called for an inquiry because I think that there's no need for a separate inquiry. We're already doing that. And ultimately, if the Judiciary Committee or a separate select committee decide to recommend articles of impeachment to the House of Representatives, it's not something to celebrate. As a Democrat, as somebody who vehemently did not agree with Trump in the beginning, does not agree with him now. I'm not shy about that, even though my district is pretty in the middle. It's not a thing that we want to celebrate, ever, if we have to impeach the president. That is the worst possible thing that, it's the fail-safe, right? It's the only thing that's left when we have no other recourse within our Constitution. And so if we ultimately have to take that vote, we need to be somber about it, and we need to be looking at it as a huge deal. And frankly, if we'd done that with Bill Clinton, we probably would be having a different conversation than we are today.
Let me give you both a task for a minute.
one of the areas I just discussed with two Republican congressmen a moment ago. One of the things that's really emerged in this fragile time are senses, of racial division, the Me Too movement, the rollback of rights and voting rights. We have a debate about reparations for African Americans and their past and whatnot. And I'm interested in this. Eric Fanning, who had been the gay Secretary of the Army, I interviewed him as he was just going out, and I asked him about transgender service in the military before he was going out and whether that would last. And he said it's very hard to roll back rights. And it turns out he was wrong. And so I'm interested in this time of the fragility, and the task I want to give you, again, thinking in the spirit of getting things done, working across the aisle, how can, if we were to play a political game here and say, how can we stop the rollback of rights or begin addressing gender and pay gaps and race and identity and voting rights in a more constructive way than we're doing, what would you both suggest?
Do you want to go first?
Debbie?
I'll let you
I mean, you have the largest Arab American, dense Arab American presence in the country, and they're another community that feels very under siege right now.
They are under siege.
Yeah.
I mean, tomorrow is 9/11, a day that none of us will ever forget. But we are going backwards. I mean, there was a church, Baptist church in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, that until Andy Levin and I together, I called Andy last week, was going to have an anti-Muslim, they're destroying the country church service tomorrow. And Andy and I put out a joint statement about this hatred, and they canceled it this afternoon. So, but it took a lot of, and Katie and I were talking about this too, because I live in Dearborn, Michigan, and we're bringing up, quite frankly, people are bringing up a lot of political issues that are just there to divide us and to force us to take votes. And we are attacking the fundamental principles of our Constitution right now. Mm-hmm. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Yes, we love you. But we do. I mean, it's really people, and we've got to really stand up and not be afraid to talk about some really tough issues. And I can't believe that we're watching ourselves go backward at the way that we are. And by the way, you can never take for granted what we've accomplished. Sometimes women don't know how far we've come, and women don't support each other.
Oh, I totally agree.
Well, frankly, I think that's part of why we saw the sort of reaction to the 2016 elections. And I'm frankly one of those people, right? I was not planning on getting into politics. That was not my framework. I was working in the social services sector. I was running the largest homeless services organization in the state of California. And if just being totally honest, if it were not for what happened in 2016, for the fact that Trump won, and the fact that I saw, and my organization and the work that I was doing saw how those rollbacks were going to affect what we were trying to do, I don't think it ever would have been on my radar to do something like run for Congress. And but I and so many women across the country not only decided to run, and that's why you have this historic number of women, because we realized that the things that we cared about, both in terms of the issues that matter, homelessness, housing, healthcare, but also our fundamental basic rights and liberties and where we thought we were as a society, were fundamentally thrown into question. And that was the case for me. I mean, I really did not think that it was possible for somebody who has said and done the things that this president has openly said and done to get elected in 2016. And for that to have continued past then, and in many ways gotten worse, is, to me, it is not a reflection of what this society is really like, what this country is really like. It is a reflection of how we as the vast majority of people do not show up and do not have our voices, ensure that our voices are heard. And a lot of that comes from disenchantment within the political system. And we were just talking about it while we were waiting to come in. There was nothing that I would call my member of Congress for, not because I didn't care about things, but because I didn't think there was any chance that it would matter that I called. And so many of my friends, I was raised, you vote, you show up and you vote, that's important, it's your civic duty. But so many of my friends I had to fight with, they're like, why would it matter? Why should I vote? It doesn't matter anyway. And I think when you talk about the rollback of rights, when you talk about the fact that things are tenuous, they're fragile, any progress that we make, even just look at healthcare, right? 10 years ago, we passed this thing that was supposed to be the sweeping healthcare reform and that we saw the positive effects of. It can go away in an instant if we don't fight to keep those and to expand on those. And I hope and I believe that this is the moment that our generation is waking up. Because, and I don't just see that within millennials, I see that more so even with people who are in high school, college, and even younger now.
I want to go to the audience. I want to ask one quick question. It's a cosmic question, so you can give me a cosmically quick answer. But when I look at the Democrats, when I talk about trade, or I talk the auto industry, what things that are going on there, and you look at the different factions in the Democratic caucus on things like the environment, sustainability, or workers, and what work is going to be in the future, I'm sort of thinking right now of AI, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 4 million truck drivers without degrees in America, and this kind of coming collision of progress and where people are at. And so I'm just wondering right now, do you folks worry about that? Do you worry that everything you saw in 2016 is going to get worse? You know what?
Your typical media some days.
Oh.
And the fact of the matter is we're going to have new jobs.
Yeah.
And people have not, you got to,
Well, I'm just asking a question.
No, I think about it all the time. I mean, I had a group of Mark Toussaint and Mark Pocan and Don Norquist, and I traveled the country studying this issue and talked about it. And,
So you're okay with it?
You can't, we're going to
okay.
block innovation and technology. We can't get an autonomous vehicle. I'm proud of the fact that in the House of Representatives last year, unanimously, or the last Congress, unanimously, Justin Amash even voted for it, for an autonomous vehicle bill, and it got stopped in the Senate. You know what? They're building it. They're building it in China, India, and Western Europe, and we can't even get a bill introduced this year, or it's. You know what? If we need to not be afraid of innovation and technology. We need to talk about how we prepare the workforce of the future for it.
I agree too. Another tweetable moment. Katie?
I feel like if I don't get a tweetable moment, I might not be living up to my generation's standards on this. But I think that, I think about it in the same way, right? This is just another moment where jobs expand. What humans are capable of expands, and what the economy is capable of absorbing expands based on what we are able to do with machines or with technology. And we saw that there's a reason the phrase exists, the Luddites, because they believed that if we used machines to replace basic human things, then society would collapse. That's not the case. Clearly, we've innovated far beyond what the human imagination could have conceived, even 50 years ago. But I think we'll do the same thing. If people are freed up from driving, then I don't even know what's possible. I really can't wrap my head around that. I just think of how much time I spent as a commuter before I had this job. But I do think that where the intentionality comes in is that you can't just abandon people. You can't just suddenly have an entire workforce that is overnight switched away from any kind of work, any kind of capability. We have to have the job training programs that that prepare people for that. And that's why actually when we go back to bipartisanship and we go back to some of the things that are possible when you're working together, one of my Republican colleagues and I, Anthony Gonzalez, were working on something called the Jobs Act, and it actually allows for Pell Grants to be used for vocational training. And it's basic. It seems like it should be. Why isn't this the case already? But people do need to be able to change careers. Same thing when you're talking about coal jobs versus clean energy jobs, and our role within government is to assure that transition can happen. But we can't block innovation. It's never going to work for us to.
I actually totally agree with that, and I should mention that on September 26th. The Hill is going to have a Future of Mobility Summit that looks at autonomous vehicles and drones and the future of data and how this infrastructure that's coming is going to be, incredibly life-changing, but also create lots of opportunities on the on the technology front.
The other thing you got to think about, though, even we need to is privacy. I think how technology gets used, and people are giving away. You need to think about your privacy a lot more than you do. And you think it doesn't matter?
That's a message to all of you. I know. Okay, anyway, let's take a quick lightning round of questions. I know I'm over, but we'll take really fast here. Let's take this gentleman, or these two. This gentleman right here. Yeah.
We better see some ladies raise their hands.
No, this gentleman right in the back there, and then we'll come up to you.
Hi, my name is Stanley. The question I would have for you both is, do you think that your leadership within your party is effective? I know majority of us in this room have heard plenty of times that we have the answers for some of the future problems, but it seems that when we speak up to say those answers, they're shot down again.
Thank you. This gentleman right here.
Thank you both for coming here. Blake Vieira. Social Security is going insolvent. I'm 19. I doubt I'll collect Social Security when I'm 67, I think. What efforts are in the Congress to address entitlement reform, or how are you approaching entitlements reform?
Thank you. Right here. Campbell.
These are a lot of heavy questions.
You're going to have 30 seconds to, no, just joking. Campbell.
Drug pricing and addressing maternal mortality, marijuana policy get a lot of attention, but there are a lot of more nuanced areas in healthcare that have existing strong bipartisan support that might not get enough attention. I was curious what issues come to mind for you that existing bipartisanship exists that are not going to have attention.
So bipartisanship, great. Let's, this gentleman in the white tie, we'll take two right over here. And then, is there any?
Can we really have, I'm not kidding, can we have like one woman
Yeah,
raise
woman,
their hand, please?
Yeah, right here. Yeah, great, good, yes, thank you. No, of course.
So this is a bipartisan meeting, but do you think the subtleties of things in planning, such as bringing parties out at different times, affects how we still go about our interactions with both parties?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, they did that, not us.
Right. The gentleman with the white tie, or
With-
pink
I love
tie, I'm
him.
sorry, pink. I'm colorblind. Sorry.
Hi,
Like
Luke
actually-
Lynch, American University Kogat School of Business. You guys were speaking about something that is innovation, and as a millennial taking office, how would we shift the mindset of Senate to be on par with the innovation that is taking place in the private sector? Because it seems that it always has a stigmatized public sector is lacking while the private sector takes. So how can we shift that
Can I
mindset?
just answer that question in two
Yes.
words?
Sure.
Because elect new senators, 3 words.
Okay, I like it. Is there another, I'm going to take you, well, kind of, okay. I was going to go to you. Oh, well, we'll go to you, and then we'll get a shout out from you, and we'll
Perfect. Yeah, so H.R. 8, universal background checks, has been tabled on Mitch McConnell's desk. How do you get around when, like, your Republican senators just won't keep things going? Like, how do you believe we
gonna
can
do the
keep
3 words
progress
again?
Elect
moving
new
in a
senators.
Okay.
Yeah. And can you just shout it out, and I'll just repeat it? Okay, go ahead. You get the mic. Hi.
Hi, Jen Carroll. I work in social media, and I know that much of an impact that has on our daily lives and on many campaigns and many electoral incidents. How do you see social media impacting the upcoming election campaign, and
Right.
where do you think that needs to shift or change in order to be more effective?
Folks, we're all going to hang out after. We've got so many questions on board, and I think they've done a wonderful job of covering so much of the gamut. So let's do you think your leadership is effective? What's happening with entitlement reform? Are there, what's the issue with private sector? You were asking where are the areas of bipartisan agreement that we're not paying attention to? Where's the media not reporting and seeing, moments that should be reported where good things are happening? H.R. 8, the background check bill, and what impact can social media have? Debbie?
So we
All of
don't
them
have
at once.
any time. So I'm going to say that when I introduce a bill or when I'm working on a bill, I always look for a Republican to introduce it within it. Katie, I think, does the same thing. Steve mentioned my relationship with Fred Upton. Fred Upton's my best friend, and I talk to him every morning. And, we do background checks. Fred voted for it. And Fred and I have a red flag bill that we introduced with Susan Brooks and Ted Deutsch, and I was sort of screaming about it today a little because Vice President Pence a week ago said we should follow the Indiana bill. So I think my style of leadership is to build the coalition and to find a way, we're all not, we need to listen to each other more. We need to put ourselves in each other's shoes more. I hope that some of you aren't thinking the same thing today as you are in 40 years. You learn from life's experiences and from other people's perspective. And that's what I try to do, listen to other people and find the common ground.
Katie?
Are we
You want
trying
the
to answer
list?
all of them? Okay.
Well, you can do do you find your leadership effective? Yes or no?
I'm part of leadership, and so
okay,
is Debbie,
good.
so
Yeah,
yes.
there you go. Okay, yes. Entitlement reform.
So there is an effort actually in Congress that's Social Security 2100. One of my colleagues, John Larson, this is his thing that he is laser focused on, and that we all need to be paying more attention to, and we don't have a choice.
Attitudes towards private sector.
What?
Attitudes. Private sector.
And private sector drives the economy, and we
Is that
have
fair?
to use
I mean,
that.
I'm
Yeah.
curving this a little bit too much, but is that pretty close?
I think we need a better partnership and a better
I know Debbie
relationship
works with
with
the private
yeah.
sector frequently. So,
Well, I do.
yeah.
I can't, look, I worked for General Motors for more than 3 decades. So, and I learned a lot. And there are days that I'm like, did I get more done? But we need to stop demonizing people in government. There was a time in this country that public service was respected. You all need to help build that back up. And when it comes to Social Security is one of the bedrocks of this country. We're going to make sure that it's solvent. And we got to do it. So, we can't take it away, but we got to make sure that for 19-year-olds, it's going to be there long term. And there are all of us. I'm one of the chief co-sponsors of the bill. I know we got to tweak it to make sure it's safe.
Well, and that's the reality is that whether you have Social Security or not, if it's insolvent, then it is still us as a society that has to bear the costs and far more than just the monetary costs, every other societal cost related to people who can't make it without that safety net. And I saw that with people who were literally dropped off, seniors who were literally dropped off with Alzheimer's because they at a homeless shelter because they didn't have someone who could take
Thank
care
you
of
for
them.
what you did for homeless people. I mean, it's really amazing. I was reading about it today, and I hadn't been aware. It's extraordinary. You should all look at that story about what Katie Hill did for thousands and thousands of homeless folks. There is another fantastic panel about to come up with Julia Manchester, but I think this question on social media is a very interesting one. Your final thoughts on that and just basically how the evolution of communications and the engagement with people is changing. Just a short minute on that, Debbie and Katie.
I think social media has done more to make this country uncivil than anything. I think people think they can say anything, and we should stop letting people get away with saying anything. And people don't develop relationships anymore. You don't, like, there's some study that 20-year-old males don't have, 20% of them don't have any friends. You need to talk to each other. You need to pick, I just saw it.
Jesus.
You need to pick up the phone and call each other. So that's my, social media is the enemy.
Katie.
I mean, as it matters, but.
And what do you think, Katie?
So I agree, but I also do think that it is the reality, and so how we figure out how to adapt to that it's something that's on each and every one of us, and it has to happen at the personal level, it has to happen at the community level, and it's never something that we're going to be able to legislate, but part of our jobs is how do we communicate with people effectively? How do we reach them? How do we engage them in democracy? And that's going to be now and probably forever moving forward until, I don't know, we can communicate just through our minds, that it's going to be through social media. And so, and we can't ignore that. That said, it is also the easiest way for our adversaries to manipulate us and to have access and to interfere with elections. And that's exactly what happened in 2016.
We will take it there. Big thanks to Representative Katie Hill and Debbie Dingell. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.